Good day, everyone. Welcome to our video lecture. It's been a while since I last posted our video lecture because we were focused on different activities and I was giving you time to practice and giving you time to do and of course we do have a lot of presentations and of course congratulations to everybody for a job well done in the debate. So the thing is, we are now down to Unit 2, and this actually Lesson 2 under Unit 2. Still with the subject EM11, Technology for Secondary Language, for Secondary Language Education. So I know you guys are very much interested and also looking forward for our next topic. So without further ado, let's begin. Allow me to share my screen to everybody. So here it is. We are now down to Lesson 2, and our Lesson 2 is Outcomes of the K-12 English Curriculum. So last time we talked about the principles and guidelines of an effective language arts and multi-literacies curriculum. Now we'll focus on the outcomes of the K-12 English curriculum. So when we say outcome class, it is the product in a way. It is what we expect the students to become or to possess after a topic that is being discussed or after a session, after an entire unit, and even after they finish a specific program in the school or in the university. So outcome, always remember the ultimate goal of the language arts and multi-literacies curriculum is actually to produce graduates who apply the language conventions. When we say language conventions, of course, these are the rules in grammar. You have the principles, the strategies, and the skills to interact with one another, to understand and learn other content areas, and fend for themselves in whatever field of endeavor they may engage in. So this is the ultimate goal, or this is the outcome that a K-12 English curriculum would like the students to become. Like this is crafted in order to produce learners or with these following competencies. Now, since K-12, we're talking about K-12 English curriculum. We're also going to look at the competencies. For example, we have the communicative competence, which has which includes a lot of other competencies under it. And we'll also be looking into multi-literacies. So before I discuss to you each or one by one the different competencies as well as the multi-literacies, let's first watch this video.
Communicative competence is a synthesis of fundamental grammatical principles, knowledge of how language is used in social circumstances to fill communicative functions, and knowledge of how utterance and communicative function knowledge may be merged according to discourse rules. Communicative competence is classified into following competencies.
So, of course, communicative competence is classified according to the following: grammatical, linguistic, social linguistic, discourse, and strategic. And communicative competence class, it is actually our ability to understand and use the language effectively in order for us to be able to communicate authentically in the social and school environment. So how we understand and use the language effectively to communicate. And we look into the authentic social, at the same time, the school environment. So this is communicative competence. So we can think of communicative competence as it's our ability, of course. So it encompasses already everything, because when we say communicative, manggod is the way you understand and at the same time use the language effectively so you can communicate. Oftentimes, if We were not able to actually really convey the message that we wanted to convey. Oftentimes, it would really result to misunderstanding and at the same time communication breakdown, which is true to people due to a lot of differences. For example, culture, that is one, because we do have different interpretation or understanding of things. For example, this person is saying this, but you do have a different interpretation because your culture is also different. So that could be one of the factor that would hinder you to be able to show this communicative competence. But when we say communicative competence, it's our understanding and the way we use the language for effective communication. And effective communication is, of course, when two people involved in the dialogue were able to understand each other, and at the same time what the speaker wants the listener um, to like the message that the speaker wants to cascade to the listener was being received as how it should be. But if it isn't, then of course it was not effective at all. The communication was not effective. So you need to talk more, no? in order to really in order to really compromise or at the same time really solve a problem or an issue, especially if there is communication breakdown or misunderstanding as you basically talk. So this is communicative competence. And under communicative competence, we have the grammatical or the linguistic competence. So of course, it is essential para sa communicative competence to be grammatically and linguistically competent because this is our knowledge about the grammar, the vocabulary, of course, language conventions, no, mga rules, punctuation, spelling, sentence structure, or the syntax. So that is under the grammatical and linguistic competence. So, of course, that is very important. That's why it's under communicative competence because if you have so many errors or problem with the conventions or the language conventions, then it could also be the, of course, obviously, it could be the cause for ineffective communication. Next is the social linguistic competence. The social linguistic competence, it talks about the social rules of language. So when we say language, we use the language for different contexts, for different situations. For example, formality, we have to make sure that when we talk to people, it actually depends on the person that we are speaking with. For example, that person is just a friend, or not really just a friend, but is a friend. Of course, you don't need to be very formal. And the level of politeness as well and directness, or how you make it like direct, the way you speak. So it also involve or includes rather non-verbal behaviors. It's social linguistic competence. And of course, the cultural references is what I said. When we are going to talk about communicative competence, even the culture is also, of course, important. So, for example, idioms, expressions, and background knowledge. Well, oftentimes, the more traveled a person you are, um, the more your perspective and your understanding about things are widened. But if you are not, like you have very limited exposures on culture, then of course, your understanding is also very limited. So I am speaking this as as what I observe, and even to myself as well, because here in our country, especially like in in our place, in the area where we are at, we could not really see multiculturally diverse place, because more or less our, in terms of culture, in terms of beliefs, more or less it's very dominantly we guys have the same, no? So it's not very evident. So the kind of classroom that really talks about a grabe multicultural siya would be if you have different students coming from different countries, and they all gather in your classroom, and then studying, and of course you're teaching them. So that is for the social linguistic competence, which is under communicative competence. And then we have the strategic. The strategic competence, actually our skill on how to solve. Okay. If there are language gaps, how could we be able to solve it? That is strategic competence. You have to plan and assess the effectiveness of communication. And it's actually here you can achieve conversational fluency, and you tend to modify text for purpose and for your audience. So this is strategic, how you can solve and overcome. Okay, how you can overcome language gaps. Along the way, basig na yung mga gaps, there might be gaps. So what would you do as a person to make sure that the communication is still effective? And then lastly, discourse. So actually, it depends on how open the mind of the people involved in the dialogue, because if there is a misunderstanding or a language gaps among the people involved in the dialogue, then it depends also on how open the minds of those involved, if they are willing to listen to explanations, to further probably understand better why this specific person says this phrase or this sentence. Because somehow the cause of language gaps or misunderstanding is because the person one has said something, and person two perceives it differently, or how the person takes it may be very negative, which may not be really how the other person wants it to be. So in that case, there is a need for further dialogue, right? But the thing is, if the person you are speaking with is open enough to listen to your explanation, and to also talk about it, then that means whatever language gaps you guys have, it will be solved. So that is strategic competence. And then last, we do have the discourse competence. So it's actually understanding how ideas are connected through, and we look into the patterns of organization. We also look into cohesiveness, and of course the transitional devices that we are going to use. So this is what is expected of a K to 12 English curriculum. We make sure our students are have communicative competence, because communicative competence, it encompasses these other competencies. Now we do also have multi-literacies. So okay, I already discussed to you class about communicative competence, and this is just a kind of review. It is a synthesis of knowledge of basic grammatical principles, knowledge of how language is used in social settings to perform communicative functions, and how knowledge of utterances and communicative functions can be combined according to the principles of the discourse. So our very goal here is, of course, to produce students who are, communicatively competent. Because if you possess communicative competence, you have this, overall, you already probably can digest, or already grammatical linguistic competence and the other competencies under. Now, communicative competence is classified into the following competencies. So, which is if we talk about the grammatical linguistic competence, it means acquisition of the phonological rules. So this is the very basic morphological words, syntactic rules, semantic rules, and even the lexical items.
Grammatical or linguistic competence is acquiring phonological rules, morphological words, syntactic rules, semantic rules, and lexical elements. Grammatical or linguistic competence is acquiring phonological.
Now for the social linguistic competence.
Social linguistic competence is the acquisition of pragmatic characteristics of various speech activities in social situations, such as cultural values, norms, and other social-cultural conventions. They include the conversation's context and topic, the participant's social position, gender, age, and other factors that influence speech styles and registers.
That's a social linguistic competence, which I already also mentioned. Next,
social linguistic.
The discourse competence, the knowledge of rules regarding cohesion, coherence.
Discourse competence is the understanding of the norms that govern the cohesiveness and coherence of diverse sorts of discourse. Social linguistic norms of usage and discourse rules are essential in interpreting utterances for social meaning, especially when the literal meaning of utterance does not immediately lead to the speaker's goal. Discourse competence.
And then we do have the strategic competence.
Strategic competence is the capacity to adjust for breakdown using verbal and nonverbal strategies such as self-correction, while also boosting communication efficacy through identifying discourse structure, activating background knowledge, contextual guessing, and tolerating ambiguity.
So I also already discussed strategic competence earlier. So for the multi-literacies, multi-literacy practices, it recognizes class that there are many kinds of literacy at work within our society. So these include, we do have traditional literacy practices using texts, as well as new literacy practices using texts of popular culture such as film. So we also make sure that our students are equipped with not only a one literacy, but of course a lot of, especially now, the world in this 21st century has demanded so much already. So it's not okay that students are only could be able to communicate, but of course students should be able to imbibe all other important literacies. For example, the communication, digital, that is also one things that you guys had in your building and enhancing literacies across the curriculum. We already talked about the multi-literacies, and it includes traditional literacy practices using text, as well as new literacy practices using text of the popular culture, such as the one in films. Now, the very aim of the K-12 English curriculum is actually to help learners acquire highly developed literacy skills, and these highly developed literacy skills could enable them to actually understand English language, and is the most widely used medium of communication in trade, and the arts, the sciences, mathematics, and in world economy. So it aims to help learners acquire highly developed literacy skills that would aid them to understand the English language that are used, of course, in different disciplines as well. So the curriculum aims to help learners understand that English language is a dynamic social process which actually responds to and reflects changing social conditions, and that English is inextricably involved with values, the beliefs, and ways of thinking about ourselves and the world we dwell in. So it's all about how we understand the English language and we use it. because we all know, class, that different disciplines, English is also used, especially here in our country, right? And for us to be able to succeed, we must know and understand the English language and must know how to use it in use it in a different media communication, especially it's used in various disciplines. So this is all about the ultimate goal or the outcomes of the K-12 English curriculum. So looking into the different competencies and also looking into its ultimate goal, which is actually understanding the language, English language, and know how to use it in various contexts and various discipline. And that's the very aim of it. That's why we have to make sure that students are multi-literate as well, so that we could if students are multi-literate, then we know that we are producing holistic learners. So I hope you learn it too from this video lecture. This is all about for the lesson 2 under unit 2. And more video lectures are coming. So I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much, everyone. And I will give you the activity or the things that we need to do basically after the discussion of all the lessons under unit 2. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Keep safe. Have a great weekend.